Hi, my name is Adriana and this is a reading vlog on this book. So if you watched my Q3 TBR, you will know that Sandstorm by James Rollins is something I was planning on reading in August. August is my birthday month and I like to do a fun thing for my birthday month where I read books with very little literary value. James Rollins has written my all-time favorite series called the Sigma Force, and it is a series of adventure, spy, science thrillers. And they're very brainless and very fun, and I have just adored all of them immensely. The series is ongoing. I read the most recent one, Kingdom of Bones, a couple months ago. Really loved it. I was talking about the series as a whole and realized I don't remember most of them. Like, this is the first one. Literally do not remember anything about it. Don't remember any of the plot. Obviously I know the characters because the characters are still out and about in the series. But I bought the entire series in mass market paperback so I could go through and annotate them and, you know, write them all up and hopefully remember them a little bit better this time. So that is the goal of this vlog, to read this book, to hopefully love it and hopefully not discover that it is extremely problematic because it was written in the early 2000s. So we will have to see how this turns out for me. The only other time I read this, the first time I read this, the only time I read this, I was a sophomore in high school, which was 12 years ago. Many moons ago. So I'm hoping that this does not turn out to be bad. I will be so sad if this is bad, but we'll see. So I will check back in when I have something to say. So I'm about 10% into this book now, and none of it is ringing a single bell. I do not remember a single thing about this book. It's crazy. Like, I'm learning things about characters I've been reading about for years. So I mean that's kind of cool. Like, the main character of this book is kind of been phased out of the series now. In this book, he's like the main character, he's the commander, he's the lead spy guy. In the later books, he kind of gets moved up into the director position, so he's not really going on missions anymore. We don't really see him that much. So I'll probably learn a little bit more about him in this book. I don't know what other characters I can expect to see in this book that I would recognize from the later books, but yeah, I straight up remember nothing about this book. And I was like thinking about it more. I really don't remember anything about my sophomore year of high school in general, but then I remembered I came across this little nugget the other day, my good old point and shoot from 2010, and wouldn't you know it, it still had a 2 GB SD card in it. So I plugged that thing into my MacBook and I was humbled. 2010 Adriana was rough. It was rough. It was a rough time in life. I'll throw up a few pictures, but just be warned, I did not get hot until like 2 years after college. I'm a very recent hot person. This is all new. This is all new to me. So I do not look like a TikTok teen. Without further ado, here's a couple pictures. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'll be back shortly with more on this book. I mean, even being 10% in, the 2005 is very much showing. Getting a lot of objectification of women. Getting a little bit of racial stereotyping. So, you know, I was expecting some amount of that. It's not as bad as it could be, but we still have 90% of the book to go through, so I guess we'll hold back on saying if this is canceled or not. Okay, so not a reading update, but this weekend, today's Friday, and this weekend we are going to Idaho for a little brew fest situation. That should be really cool. It's up at the top of a ski mountain, so we get to take the gondola up and it's really fun. But we're meeting my boyfriend's mom and his aunt over there, so we're just gonna get packed up and drive out. Hopefully I can convince my boyfriend to drive so I can read on the drive. Okay, so we just got back from Idaho, back at home, and I did actually read a lot more this weekend than I thought I would, and I am enjoying this so much. I'm on page 240 out of 700, and I am having a good time. This is the kind of spy nonsense that like I am here for. The 2005 of it is kind of showing its head in good and bad ways. I don't know. I mean, obviously the depiction of women is so mixed. I do enjoy a lot of the female characters James Rowlands writes, and I think they are like interesting and well developed. But then every time they're introduced, we gotta talk about like the way they look, which is like kind of weird. So I think that's just a 2005 thing, just the way it is. Obviously some of the racial stereotyping that was not acceptable in 2005, but just a lot more prevalent in 2005 is in here a bit. I don't know, I think I just have like a certain amount of nostalgia for this series. Yes, it's got some issues, but it's also just, it's a really good time. I also really enjoy how excited they get about the internet, because you know, 2005. I don't know, none of this is still really coming back to me, but I am having just a good old time, just a blast, just loving life. Ruby from Ruby Red is doing some reading sprints on her channel. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to get some more reading in because, like I said, I'm just having a really great time with this book. Okay, so I'm officially like halfway through Sandstorm, so probably now would be a good time to tell you what this book is about, because I didn't know until I read it. Basically, we start off in the British Museum in London. There is a huge explosion in this new display that they are putting together. When they investigate, they find that it was this old statue made out of a meteorite that had exploded, and this explosion is very reminiscent of the major donor of this exhibit's father's death. So let me backtrack a little bit and see if I can make this make a little more sense. So Cara Kensington, incredible British name, is a billionaire oil philanthropist CEO, and when she was 16, her father passed away due to mysterious circumstances in the desert. And this explosion in the museum that she's patroning is very reminiscent of his death. Her best friend, Sophia, is the curator of the British Museum, and so they team up and decide they're going to try to get to the bottom of this, go to where the statue was found, and try to put this all together. So they get Dr. Omaha Dunn, an archaeologist, and Sophia's ex-fiance, so that's a little juicy. They're trying to put together this expedition to go figure out what's going on, why this meteor exploded, what's happening. On the other side of this, we have the whole Sigma Force side. So Sigma Force is a offshoot of DARPA. They're kind of DARPA's military arm to keep technology, new technologies being developed by DARPA in the US from leaving the US. So they're kind of there to protect technologies within the United States. So they are very interested in this explosion in the British Museum because it is giving off similar radiation to an antimatter explosion. And for those who are unaware of antimatter, it was kind of like a new big thing they were discovering in the early 2000s. But basically you have matter, like what we're all made of, and then antimatter, which is kind of a scientific construct. I don't know if they've ever found really like physical antimatter. I guess besides like the CERN. I don't know. I'm not that invested or knowledgeable about antimatter, but basically when matter comes into contact with antimatter, they explode
and release a ton of energy. So the US government is interested in this because it is basically infinite energy. Like you can just make so much energy off of these matter-antimatter explosions. I'm sure there's also a weapons use for it as well. But basically the Sigma Force gets put out there to try to learn more about this explosion. Was it antimatter? And then how to make sure that technology doesn't fall into the wrong hands, which the wrong hands are also a part of this whole mess. And they are trying to learn more about this explosion as well, trying to kidnap Sophia, the curator, because she's very knowledgeable about this statue and where it came from, so they want her knowledge to be able to track down this mystery as well. This is a very hard book to explain because there's just so much going on. It is dense. I mean, even for being like 700 pages, like all of these pages are jam-packed with knowledge and plot points and action scenes and so much, which is why I really enjoy these books. They're a fun time. And I think part of the reason I have such a hard time remembering the plot is because there is so much bonkers stuff going on. I'm still enjoying it. I think it's gonna end up being my problematic fave, but you know, all of us have that one problematic fave. And for me, it's gonna be the Sigma Force series. I'm gonna accept it now that it has some issues, but I still really enjoy it. So being about halfway through the book, the Sigma Force is together with like Kensington and Sophia and Dr. Dunn. They're all together doing their thing. The bad guys are also involved doing their thing. We haven't had direct confrontation yet. Well, I guess we have had semi-direct confrontation. There hasn't been much real like interaction yet as far as like dialogue or anything. We are heating up. It's getting real exciting. Muy caliente. Okay, so I didn't check in yesterday because I had a minor medical procedure and I was not feeling very good afterwards. I got a little bit of reading done at the doctor's office and a little bit of reading done yesterday, but like I said, I wasn't feeling that good, so I didn't do much. But I have reached pretty close to page 500. So I am 5/7 of the way through this book, which I have no idea what that amounts to in percentage. I'm like 70% of the way through the book. And this is in fact a problematic fave. I love this book. I am enjoying this book so much, but I don't think I can recommend it to people because I don't want people to judge me based on how much I love this book. The plot is so cool, and like the amount of history and like science he weaves into it is just incredible and so much fun. But like there's an entire group of characters who are all women, and in order for part of their powers to work, they have to be naked. And it's like, do they James? Do they Jimbo? Do they really need to be naked for their powers to work? Like, you wrote this. You could have written, you didn't have to write that. That didn't have to be in there. Why? Why, James? Why? And then, you know, some of like the racial stereotyping, not great, but to be, like I said, kind of somewhat expected for a book written in this era. I love it so much, and I look forward to reading it every night, but it is definitely a problematic favorite. Guilty pleasure station. Raher. So, you know, there you go. There's my check-in. Okay, so I stayed up past my bedtime last night and finished Sandstorm. Is it problematic? Yes. Am I going to give it 5 stars anyways? Also, yes. There's a lot wrong with this book, and I'll go into it now. Like I've mentioned a couple times, the portrayal of women, not great. And I've mentioned a few specific examples, but another thing I want to bring up also is kind of like a little bit of a trigger warning. One of the characters, her traumatic backstory, and I put traumatic backstory in quotes just because it's kind of like a cliche at this point to have like a woman with a traumatic backstory. Not that her canon backstory is not traumatic, it's extremely traumatic, and that's part of the problem. Her backstory includes sexual assault from a family member, which I just found really unnecessary and really over the top for no reason. It's really only brought up twice throughout the entire book. It has nothing really to do with her character or why she became what she became. I think it actually hurts her arc as a character, in my opinion. It was really unnecessary, and I mean, he doesn't go into like graphic detail or anything. It's more just kind of brought up and I suppose used as a way to bring quick depth to a character, but again, it was unnecessary. Like, I don't think we needed that. Like, that was a bad choice. I'd already mentioned, you know, some of the racial stereotyping that is not great. So those are kind of the two main drawbacks to this book, and the two things that make it fairly problematic. But knowing all of that, I want to talk about the things I freaking love about this book. So like I had said, these are just fun spy thrillers. Like, it's constant action, it's constant movement, you're constantly moving on to the next thing, you're solving puzzles, you're doing the most. It's very reminiscent of Dan Brown. So if you are a Dan Brown fan and are willing to look past some problematic things, you can start at the beginning of the series. If you would like less problematic things, you can definitely pick up towards the end of the series. These are technically serialized, but also very episodic. So if you start at the end, you're not gonna miss much besides like some character development, but it's more like relationship development between characters and not so much that the character themselves change. But anyways, very reminiscent of a Dan Brown novel, especially in regards to including like history and solving all of these like ancient puzzles. What I really liked about like this book specifically was it does a lot of exploring of large figures in the Abrahamic religions and kind of how they are portrayed in each of the Abrahamic religions. So that was really cool, especially, you know, taking place in Saudi Arabia, in Oman, in the Middle East. I think it's really good that religion played such a big part in this book, that we really dig into, you know, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism within this book, because those are all very large religions in that area. So it was just really cool to be able to explore that a little bit deeper, as well as the science tie into this book was so well done. I really, really liked it. The big push in this book is antimatter, but towards the end, and I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm just gonna lightly dust this over as to why I enjoyed it so much, but kind of the science tie-in at the end is very physical chemistry heavy, which I love. I love physical chemistry. Big P-Chem nerd, and the structure of molecules and atoms. So that was just really, really neat. Like, there's even little figures somewhere in here. So we even have like some diagrams in here of like molecular structures. So that's just really cool. That's just really dope. I really like it. To really boil down this whole vlog, probably shouldn't have been reading this at 15, but it's still very good, and I very much enjoyed it, even with all of the issues it has. But you know, sometimes you just gotta acknowledge the problems with your favorites, recognize that it's not all good, and that's okay. Sometimes we have problematic favorites, and that's this for me. I have to accept that something I really enjoy is fundamentally problematic, and accept that and learn and grow moving forward. So that is the conclusion of this reading vlog for Sandstorm. Thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.